Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into a massive, frankly mind-bending textual anomaly that's been hiding in plain sight. We're talking about a mystery locked inside one of the absolute most famous passages in the Hebrew Bible, the burning bush. We're going to look at the source text not just as that familiar old story, but as an intricate, high-stakes theological detective story. And, as scholars argue, it's a story that actually reshapes our entire understanding of Israel's God. Okay, so let's contrast the popular cultural myth of the burning bush with the actual, kind of startling words of the biblical text. You know the Sunday school version, right? We've all heard it. It tells us that God simply spoke to Moses out of a flaming shrub. But look at the source text in Exodus 3. It explicitly says the very first thing Moses encounters is an angel. Yet almost immediately after that, the speaker is identified as God. So this poses the central mystery of our explainer today. Who was actually in the bush? Think about it. If the text explicitly says the angel of Yahweh was the one present in the flames, why does it then immediately pivot to say that Yahweh is observing Moses and that God is the one speaking? Let's zoom in on the exact words. The source material highlights these rapid-fire, seemingly contradictory grammatical shifts happening in just a span of a few verses. The text states, "The angel of the Lord appeared. Then, just a breath later, God called to him out of the bush." And finally, that exact same voice declares, "I am the God of your father." It switches between the angel, Yahweh, and God so fast it almost gives you whiplash. Now, modern scholarship often just writes this off as a sloppy editorial mistake, like competing source traditions just awkwardly pasted together. But the analysis we are exploring argues this isn't an error at all, far from it. It's actually a deliberate textual fingerprint. It reveals a binatarian, or two Yahwehs theology. The text is portraying God in two distinct roles simultaneously, an invisible sovereign up at the head of the divine council, and a visible vice-regent, the angel, who actually appears in human form to act in history. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at a specific Hebrew verb used right here in the text, ra'ah. It literally means to be seen or to appear, and the paper stresses that this verb specifically describes a physical, human form entity that a person can actually interact with. It is not describing a dream or a vision, and it is definitely not just a disembodied voice echoing down from the sky. It implies a real embodied encounter. And the crazy thing is, the use of this verb isn't isolated. If we trace this grammatical fingerprint across the patriarchal timeline, we see a stunning pattern. Yahweh appears to Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and later Samuel. Take Genesis 18, for instance. Yahweh appears to Abraham as a physical presence who sits down, accepts hospitality, eats bread and veal, and physically walks. The biblical writers are consistently using this specific language to describe a visible, human-formed God all across the timeline. Now, here is an easily missed detail from Exodus 3. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Notice it doesn't say he was afraid to look at the fire. The text really emphasizes that Moses was hiding from a visible divine being, the human form presence of the angel. He wasn't just shielding his eyes from some intense combustion. He completely understood that the presence was the main event, and the fire, well, that was just incidental. Then, the text uses another incredibly fascinating verb, yarad. It means came down. The source analysis points out that this functions as a deliberate, massive textual echo to the events of the Tower of Babel. At Babel, Yahweh came down to scatter the nations and disinherit them. But now, at Horeb, at the burning bush, Yahweh explicitly says he has come down again, but this time it's the exact mirror reversal. He comes down to reclaim his inheritance, Israel, right out from the grip of Egypt. This grand cosmic reversal sets the stage for a seriously pivotal moment. Moses asks for God's name, and this right here is the next crucial clue in our textual investigation. Why does Moses ask, and more importantly, why does God answer by providing a self-contained definitive name? To fully grasp the magnitude of this, we have to understand how names worked back in the ancient world. See, in the ancient Near Eastern cultural context, a name was not just some arbitrary label. It was literally the essence and power of the being. Knowing an entity's name, especially a demonic or hostile one, gave you leverage and control over it. Because of that, the sovereign God over the entire cosmos absolutely cannot be named by an external party. If someone else named God, it would imply they had leverage over him. No way. God must name himself, and he has to do it from a position of pure, absolute authority. And so, he does exactly that. God answers with Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh. Now, while that's traditionally translated as I am who I am, our source text notes that many scholars actually argue the tetragrammaton functions as a causative, meaning it translates more to he who causes to be. And honestly, this perfectly fits the narrative, doesn't it? The God who causes all things to exist is right there at the bush, causing something completely new to exist, a redeemed nation, totally freed from bondage. But hold on, there is a bit of a wrinkle here. Later on in Exodus 6:3, God seems to say that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob never actually knew this name. At first glance, this looks like a glaring contradiction, right? I mean, the patriarchs use the name Yahweh constantly in Genesis. However, grammatical analysis suggests this verse is actually a rhetorical question, not a literal denial. The syntax reads way more accurately like this: By my name Yahweh, did I not make myself known to them? The expected answer is a resounding yes. They absolutely did know it. So, the absolutely crucial point is how this visible speaker, who is identifying himself with this absolute name, actually talks. Look closely at Exodus 3:12. The voice says, I will be with you. You shall serve God on this mountain. Did you catch that? The speaker uses the first person for himself, but then refers to God in the third person. The visible speaker in the bush suddenly references the invisible God as a totally distinct referent. It is yet another major grammatical fingerprint of this two Yahweh reality. And this brilliantly illustrates what scholars call the intertextual chain. Think of it like a detective's corkboard with the red string connecting all the dots. This visible Yahweh wasn't just a one-off event. In Exodus 23, God promises an angel for the journey. Then in Joshua 5, a commander with a drawn sword demands Joshua remove his sandals, which is a direct echo of the burning bush. And in Judges 2, the angel explicitly speaks in the first person, claiming he personally brought Israel out of Egypt. The ultimate interpretive key linking all of this together is found in Exodus 23:21. God commands Israel to obey this angel, stating, My name is in him. This angel has the authority to pardon transgressions, which is something only God can do, simply because God's essence, his actual presence, dwells right inside this human form angel. The name is the presence, and the presence is Yahweh. The two powers in heaven, Second Temple Jewish theology. This framework wasn't lost on ancient readers, who formally recognized this exact theology centuries before the New Testament. Which brings us to the real culmination of the paper's argument. The New Testament authors directly mapped this exact, visible, name-bearing Yahweh framework straight onto Jesus. Just look at the comparison. The Hebrew Bible features an angel of Yahweh, who is a visible presence bearing the divine name to deliver Israel. Fast forward, and the New Testament features Jesus, who explicitly claims to manifest the Father's name and keep his people in that name. We can really see how this builds in the Gospel of John. In his high priestly prayer, Jesus states, I have manifested your name to the people whom you gave me. The source text argues that Jesus is explicitly claiming the exact name-bearing function that the angel of Yahweh carried back in Exodus. He is the permanent and fleshed version of that exact same visible divine presence. The analysis ties this all together by looping the I am of the burning bush directly to the eschatological conclusion of the entire Bible. Over in Revelation, the risen Christ is portrayed speaking with the full name first heard in the fire, the one who is, who was, and who is to come. The eternal I am, expanded across all of history, is claimed directly by the crucified and risen Lord. So what does this all mean? We have to ask ourselves, is the burning bush just an isolated magical moment at the beginning of a rescue story? Or is it the Pentateuch's grand introduction to the binitarian nature of God? A structural blueprint that perfectly anticipates the architect of eternity. The deep architectural unity of these texts invites us to rethink everything we thought we knew. I hope this explainer leaves you eager to go back and reread the biblical narrative with entirely new eyes.